The Nintendo Switch 2 has a lot of features and things that you might want to know that maybe you missed if you somehow didn't watch the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, or if you did and there were just so many details that you couldn't take it all in. So today, a week before this thing launches, I just want to come on here and tell you all every single thing you might need to know about your brand new Nintendo Switch 2 if you are planning on getting one, or just to give you a better informed decision-making process for if you really do want to purchase one on day one. So starting off, one of the biggest confusion points I have seen here, and this goes for both the Nintendo Switch 1 and 2, is the virtual game card system. And I think it's really important to talk about this one first because that is how Nintendo presented it to us. The virtual game card system was announced as a Switch 1 feature right before they announced all the stuff with the Nintendo Switch 2 and that game share feature, which we will obviously get into in just a second. But virtual game cards are very different than game sharing. Your virtual game card is essentially your digital games. So now, rather than just having your digital game, they are saying you have a virtual game card. If you were to buy a physical version of this thing, you would have a game card that you could take in and out of your system and give to someone else. This system makes it to where if you want to share your game like you do with the physical one, you just go to your virtual game card menu on the home page. You select your profile, you then select which game you want to share or which game you want to give to somebody else, and you either click load on this system or load on another system or whatever you want to do with that game. So essentially, you go to that menu and you click the game and then you give it to someone else, or you take it back, or you just keep it on that system. So that is the way you do that. It's essentially just physical game cards with virtual games. You're giving it to someone else or you're keeping it on your own system to play. This is a very, very simple thing in which I felt they spent a lot of time overcomplicating. You have to eject it as a regular physical card would. You have to press the eject button when you're done with it and then load it onto someone else's system. And then they can only have it for 14 days, but the progress of that game is saved on their console. So if they aren't finished with the game or they need longer than 14 days, you can keep lending it back to them until they have finished it. And that's a very, very smooth process. But it's obviously going to be a little bit complicated for people if they don't want to keep sending it back over and over again. But essentially, that is all it is. You're sharing your games with other people using this virtual game card system, and that is why it is so complicated to have this alongside the actual game share feature, because this is essentially just sharing your digital games. The big difference between the virtual game card system and the game share feature is that with the virtual game card, you are essentially having your own game and then giving it to someone else. Now, when you physically give your game to someone else, you can't play it because you don't have it anymore. The person who has it can play it. That makes sense. So then you look at the game share feature and you say, okay, I have this game, you don't have this game. I am going to use this game share feature to allow all of us to play my game together, even if you don't own it. And the game that they show off here is Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics and also Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. You can then share your game with up to 3 different people locally or online if you have a Switch 2, and you get to play these games with your friends. So if I have 3D World and I want to play with y'all, but I know you don't have the game and you live 1,000 miles away, we can play online together by simply using my copy of the game. You don't have to make a single purchase. All you have to do is have the Switch 2 on hand, which is different from the virtual game card because I'm essentially giving you the game for you to play by yourself. Game share is when we all play my copy together and you don't have to worry about buying it because I'm sharing my game with you. Next up is a big thing if you are getting a Switch 2 and you already have a Switch 1. If you want to transfer all of your data over to the Nintendo Switch 2, all you have to do is go to your settings, click on System at the bottom, and at the very bottom of that, click on Switch 2 Transfer. Then it will tell you that there are a bunch of things you can and cannot transfer, but most of it is just going to be obvious. Your system settings, your save data, all your users, screenshots, etc. will all be transferable over to your Switch 2, and this is a process that you can start right now. If you know you're not going to play your Switch for the rest of this week, or if you don't need it anymore and you know you're going to trade it in, you can essentially put all of your data up in the cloud right now, go trade in your Switch 1 or sell your Switch 1, get your Switch 2, and log into your account, and via the cloud, all of your save data and everything that you had on your Switch 1 will automatically install itself onto your new Nintendo Switch 2. Next up, if you want to know about the specific specs of the Switch 2, what is it going to look like, how different is it going to be, let me tell you. This thing is going to be much, much bigger than the Nintendo Switch, but only in all the ways that really matter. The actual width of the system is the exact same as the Nintendo Switch 1, but the screen itself is much bigger. It's about 8 inches compared to 6.2. The screen will also be capable of 1080p rather than 720p, so the resolution is going to look a lot smoother, a lot slicker. The screen itself is just going to be beautiful because it can also run up to 120 frames per second. Now this is a huge upgrade from the Nintendo Switch because some games in handheld mode would pretty much only go up to 30 FPS and that was it. Now, the screen is not an OLED. It is not an OLED screen, but it has HDR in it, and that makes it pretty much better than what OLED systems have right now. Sure, it is older technology because it is LCD, but all that really does is just make it cheaper for you to consume. The OLED model is obviously phenomenal, and this will not have as deep, rich blacks as that will because those pixels turn off, but on the LCD screen of the Switch 2, it has been compared many, many times to be much, much better. Moving on to the Joy-Con itself, the Joy-Con are much bigger, and the big difference here is that they don't slide on, they snap on with magnets, so it's a lot easier for you to release them, and they hopefully shouldn't have as much drift or any other issues that you might have with the original Switch 1. The sticks are bigger, the buttons are bigger, everything is bigger. So if you were one of those people that were really struggling with cramps and all of that, you are going to be much happier with the Switch 2. Also, the mouse controls with these Joy-Con are huge. This makes the Nintendo Switch 2 probably the best console on the market because it has all those third-party games, all the power of a PS4 Pro, plus the portability of the Switch and mouse controls, so that makes PC games actually really accessible for this console. Another feature is obviously going to be the game chat feature that they have really pushed. That was one of the biggest things that they wanted to push in this Direct. They spent way too long, in my opinion, on this early in the Direct, but a microphone is going to be on the system itself, which means that if you are speaking, it's going to hear your voice, and it claims to have this very smart sense of hearing in which it can tell when you're speaking, but it blocks out all of the other noise, such as a blender in the background. That was the example they used. So if you have screaming kids around, or if you have vacuums running, hopefully it should be able to tell that you're talking and just knock out every other sound. Another new feature is the kickstand. It is so much better than even the OLED because it is less intrusive and also allows you to go at a bunch of different angles. It seems to me that this is the better way to play, and now if you ever want to use tabletop mode, because there are 2 USB-C ports, you can charge it from either the bottom if you're just holding it, or if you're playing it on the table and it's in tabletop mode, you can charge it from the top, which is very convenient, especially if you also want to use that camera, because you can put it in the dock and have it be charging, but also have the camera plug into the top USB-C port, and then you're good to go for both. As far as internal storage for this thing, the Nintendo Switch launched with 32 gigabytes of storage, which at the time was obviously not a lot, but Nintendo are masters of compression. They have been able to get a lot of their first-party games down to very small sizes. So now it's up to 256 gigabytes, which is a huge improvement day one. You're going to be able to play a lot more games and store a lot more games, but at the same time, with all of these new improvements, these next-gen games with bigger games, you're going to need every bit of that storage space, especially considering that this console is capable of 4K. It is capable of outputting all of these amazing graphics, and it also is capable of ray tracing we now know from Nvidia. So this thing is a powerhouse you can take anywhere on the go. It's bigger, it's better, it's cheaper in some sense, because if you look at the OLED, that was $350. This is $450. If you consider all of these technical upgrades to only be $100 more than that, and the screen, yes, it's not OLED, it's LCD, but still, it feels like a deal to me, and I am very happy with this price point. And that is another thing you should know. $450 for this price point. That is what you're going to get for the console alone, and if you're able to manage a Mario Kart World bundle, you'll be paying $500 for this console. What comes with the console? Well, obviously, you're going to get yourself some Joy-Con. You're going to get yourself the Joy-Con grip, the dock, the actual console itself, 2 Joy-Con straps, as well as the cords that come with it, the HDMI cable, and the plug-in cable for the actual battery. And if I might retrace my steps a little bit here about the system storage, I also want to let you know that the only type of SD card that works with the Nintendo Switch 2 is called an Express SD card, and that means if you buy a regular SD card, it will not be compatible. You have to make sure that you buy an Express version of these SD cards. I think they're doing this just to make sure everything runs a bit smoother and just making sure everything is much more updated, and that is something that everyone should know about this console if they're wanting to buy games digitally. I think I'm personally probably going to move towards a digital-only library with this new console because I don't know, I really struggle with all of these physical games, putting them in and out, and I just want the convenience of having them all on my console. So I bought my Switch 2, I pre-ordered it from Nintendo, I got the Mario Kart World bundle, I also pre-ordered from GameStop a Switch 2 SD card, an Express card. It was about $60 to have, I think, 256 more gigabytes of storage, so I'm essentially doubling my system's internal storage, and I'm just not going to have to worry about that moving forward. And you probably won't either, because a lot of these games, especially if you're going Nintendo only, aren't going to be that huge. Mario Kart World is a massive game, and I believe it's only about 25 gigabytes worth of storage, so you're not going to have to worry if you're Nintendo only. But if you do get a lot of third-party games, those games will add up. It will add up, so just keep in mind, depending on what type of player you know you are and what type of player you're going to be on this console, that is the type of storage you're dealing with. Another new feature for the Nintendo Switch 2 is the C button that is built into every single person's console. I need to take a minute to explain what this thing is, why it's necessary, and why it's not actually as big of a deal as some of the people have been making it. The C button is how you activate game chat, the feature I was talking about earlier, in which Nintendo has really pushed. They want us to be able to play with our friends together online and be able to talk to each other and see each other, which is phenomenal because the only form of voice chat we had in the past was on our stupid smartphones, and so nobody actually used that dumb app. They just used Discord or just called each other on their phones. This is actually something I could see myself using, and I think a lot of people will use it. But the thing you have to realize is that this thing will not work unless you have Nintendo Switch Online. So what a lot of people have been getting really upset about is essentially having to pay for a button that is on your console. I think that is a gross oversimplification of it. I don't think that's that big of a deal, because consider this, right? When are you going to be using game chat? Sure, there is a feature in which you can play all of your different single-player games together and still be talking, but even then, that is still using online capabilities because it has to take your game, put it online, and stream it to your friends live. So that is all using the online service, and any other case in which most people are going to be using this is when they're playing online multiplayer games together. So if you want to do that, you're going to have the online service anyways. If you're going to buy Mario Kart World and you want it to play with your friends, the first thing you're going to want to do is be able to play with them, not consider how am I going to speak with them while I'm playing with them. So if you think about it, you have to figure out how to play with them first, and the only way to play with them is by having the online service. So it makes sense. You're paying to play online with your friends, and then game chat is just secondary to where you're able to speak with them while you're playing online. And even in the case, like I said earlier, where they have this feature where you're all playing your own single-player games just together and also being able to see it online, that is still using online functionality. You still have to be able to stream that online and then show it to your other friends and family. Like, that is still something you have to have the online service for. So as much as it makes a lot of sense to be mad, oh, you have to pay for a button, it's really not that big of a deal. The next thing I want to talk about before I get into some of the games that you're going to be able to play on this console is the accessories, now that we've covered pretty much everything about the actual console itself. Something you're probably going to want is a Switch 2 Pro controller. It has new buttons on the back and front, the C button on the top, an audio jack at the bottom, and then those programmable buttons on the very back of the thing. It's very comfortable. What I've heard is that it's very similar to the Switch 1 Pro controller, so if you love that and most people think it's the best controller ever made, then I would definitely jump on this Switch 2 Pro controller, but also know all of your controllers from the Switch 1 will be compatible with the Switch 2. All your Joy-Con, your Pro controllers, every single thing you could ever think of, unless it's some weird third-party variant that doesn't qualify, that is pretty much what you're going to be able to play this console with. And as far as other accessories go, there's the obvious GameCube controller, which they are now adding with the online subscription, which is really funny. The only way to get that is through the My Nintendo store, and you have to have an online subscription, so you can't have just the regular GameCube controller unless you're a subscriber to the online service, or you just buy it secondhand off eBay or something like that. But you get the Pro controller as well, then the different types of Joy-Con, the Joy-Con wheel, but the things you're really going to want here are potential extra straps, potential extra Joy-Con like I said earlier, and then also Also, the cases that may come with this. The cases for these things are going to be very, very important, because if you want to carry around your Nintendo Switch 2 without the possibility of breaking it, that is obviously going to be something you want to have on hand. And of course, a screen protector. There was a lot of stuff about the Switch 1 back in the day in which you would put it in the dock and people were saying it was scratching the screen, and I don't think that will be a problem here, but having a case and screen protector will be important, and you can buy it off the My Nintendo store for $40, or just get a third-party one for probably a little bit cheaper or around the same price. It will be very, very important for you to have one of those. And then, of course, like I said earlier, there is the camera if you do want to have that for some of the games, or just playing online with your friends if you want people to see you. That is going to cost you about $55, I believe. So the camera, the case, and then all of these different controllers are pretty much all you need to worry about. Any other accessory that is niche to your very specific circumstance is something you just have to Google and figure out for yourself. Now, moving forward with these games here, there are 3 different types of games in which they have advertised for the Nintendo Switch 2. One are Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games like Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, games that are going to be only compatible with that console. Number 2, all of your Nintendo Switch games and any game that you could ever want is backwards compatible. And then number 3, the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. So obviously, the Switch 2 Edition games are a little bit different than just your regular Switch 1 backwards compatible games. These games were built from the ground up with different graphics made for the Switch 2, and some of them will even have a bunch of new content. Games like Super Mario Party Jamboree, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, all are getting Switch 2 editions, so the graphics are going to be much, much better. It's going to run smoother, the load times are going to be way faster, and you're also going to get a bunch of new content with these games. Whereas if you just put in a regular Switch 1 game, it's probably not going to necessarily be different. It's just that you play it on your Switch 2, which is great, because if you haven't played a Switch 1 game and you really want to play it and you only have a Switch 2, you can just buy the game and play it on the Switch 2. Another thing that they don't talk about here that I would kind of include in that Switch 2 edition category are these free upgrades. These are games that you're going to be able to play day one from the old Switch 1 on your Switch 2 for free. These games, like Super Mario Odyssey, Mario 3D World, Zelda Link's Awakening, and Echoes of Wisdom, you're going to have Clubhouse 51 Worldwide Classics, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games. They're all going to be enhanced in some way, shape, or form. If you want to see exactly what and why, go to the website. Nintendo has a bunch of different details there, but for the vast majority of these games, they're going to look better, run better, feel better, and some of them are even going to include game share, because they have to have specific games in which you do that. It's not available for every single game. Like Clubhouse games is the one that they really showed off for game share. 3D World was the one they showed off for game share. Not all of these games will be compatible with game share, but all of them will be getting free updates in some way, shape, or form. Which is really exciting, because with Switch 2 editions and free updates, at any point now we can just anticipate to see new Switch 1 games being put on the Switch 2 enhanced, which is so much fun for me to anticipate and just predict, because I made a whole video going into the games I think that will come to the Switch 2 as Switch 2 editions or free upgrades. Go give that video a chance once you finish this one. But I cannot wait to see what they do with this feature, and I just wanted to let you guys know there is a lot of nuance to what these upgrades and Switch 2 editions and backwards compatible games actually will have. The Switch 2 exclusive games are a lot more easy to understand, but this is something that you might have missed. Moving forward, what are you going to be able to play on launch date June 5th, about a week from now? June 5th is a Thursday. That is the day the Switch 2 will launch, and what are you going to be able to play on your system? Let's start with the old games first. As far as I can tell, you are going to be able to turn on your Nintendo Switch 2 eShop and digitally buy every single game from the Nintendo Switch library day one. That's it. That is all you could ever ask for right there. All of those amazing first-party games from the Switch 1, all of those third-party games that were already on the Switch 1, I am pretty confident all of those will be there day one. Now that can seem a little bit overwhelming, because those are a lot of games. As far as we know, there are over 1,000 games specifically on the Nintendo Switch. Outside of those older games that you're going to have on the Switch 2, the launch titles are going to include a bunch of different games. 24 of them I have found here on this list. Here we go in alphabetical order: Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Raver, Bravely Default HD Remaster, Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition, Deltarune Chapters 1 through 4, Final Fantasy Life I, Fast Fusion Fortnite, Hitman World of Assassination Signature Edition, Hogwarts Legacy, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, the big show stealer Mario Kart World, and then obviously the best game of all time, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma Switch 2 Edition, Civilization 7 Switch 2 Edition, Sonic X Shadow Generations, Split Fiction, Street Fighter 6, Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, Survival Kids, and Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. As far as future games moving forward, there will likely be a Nintendo Direct in June covering even more Switch 2 exclusive games and Switch 2 editions that we can look forward to, but as for now, we have plenty of things to look forward to, starting off with Donkey Kong Bonanza launching on July 17th. That game is going to be a spiritual successor to Mario Odyssey, but also a completely different 3D Donkey Kong type of game. Then we have Mario Party Jamboree plus Jamboree TV Switch 2 Edition, also launching late in July. We've got ourselves Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 Edition with a bunch of new content and new graphics. That launches in late August. Drag X Drive will be coming out sometime in summer, which is going to make a lot of use of the mouse controls, and hopefully this will not be a full-priced game. Then we've got ourselves Kirby Air Riders promised for this year, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond promised for this year, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment slated for winter, which could mean either late this year or early next year. And then obviously moving forward, we've got ourselves Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, and then the new Rhythm Heaven game that is coming out next year for the Switch 1, and I'm pretty confident we'll have Switch 2 editions. As far as pre-orders go, there is a very good chance if you did not get one by now, you're probably not going to get one before June 5th. So if you want to get a Nintendo Switch 2 on launch day or around launch day, I would just make sure you go to the store right before it opens, get in line, just try and see what those physical copies look like in person. So many stores back in the day with the Switch 1 only had enough stock to cover the pre-orders and they didn't have a lot of overflow, but the best time, in my opinion, is going to be the very first day. So if you want one, go to the stores early and often and see if they have it, call around, see who has most stock, and just hope for the best. And obviously with Mario Kart World bundle there, you're going to be saving $30 if you get the bundle, but do not, I repeat, do not pass up getting the Switch 2 if you can't get the bundle. Just shell out the extra $30. If you're paying $450, you're probably going to have extra $30 to spend on this thing. So just make sure you get the console first and foremost, and then worry about the bundle later if you want to turn it in or something. As of the time of this recording, it seems to me that Target is going to have a lot of overflow. We've seen a lot of leaks and rumors and pictures from Target in which they have a lot of copies of these consoles, and I really do think that's probably going to be your best shot at getting a new one. That's the type of store that most gamers aren't going to go to. They're going to go to GameStop, they're going to go to Best Buy. Some people are even going to think about Walmart, but Target may not be the store that most people think about when they're going to get their new console. That is the store I would recommend to you if you have not gotten a pre-order yet, and if you were unable to get the My Nintendo, register your interest in Nintendo Switch online. So, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. That was every single thing you would want to know about the Nintendo Switch 2, just about a week before its launch. I cannot wait to play this thing and review it and talk about all of the features on my channel moving forward, so make sure you like and subscribe to stay tuned for that. Click the notification bell to know exactly when my videos come out, and consider joining my membership program to get early access to all of my videos and just help support the channel at large. I really do appreciate it, and any support helps. Click on the left side of your screen if you want to see every single Nintendo Switch 2 edition game I am predicting will make it to the console, and click on the right side of your screen if you want to see what I think is going to be Nintendo's big holiday game for this year. Thank you once more for making it to the end of the video. You are amazing. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.